Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is my colleague, Forbes Money and Politics reporter, Kyle Conn-Mullins. Kyle, thanks so much for coming back on.
Always great to be here, Brittany. Thanks for having me.
You have some really interesting reporting. You write how former Microsoft CEO Steve Ballmer spent millions of his own money in a new twist on political giving. So give us the backstory here. What was the catalyst that led Steve Ballmer to found a political cause?
So Steve Ballmer, like you said, former CEO of Microsoft. Also, I should note just at the top here, somewhere between the 10th and 11th richest person in the world, depending on the day. The ranking shifts every now and then, and the stock price shifts, but he is one of the wealthiest people in the world. He's worth over $100 billion. And so after he left Microsoft in 2014, his wife, Connie, the way he tells it, she basically said, all right, now that you've left, now that you've retired, you've got to get involved in philanthropy. I've been doing philanthropy for years. You've got to get moving on this. And Steve was like, I already pay taxes. Like, isn't that good enough? Like, do I really have to get involved? And she was like, no, that's not going to cut it. So he started to look into the data, and he wanted to know, like, okay, I am paying these taxes. Where's my money going? Where can I best get involved in philanthropy? So he started to look into the data, and he found that the government data, it's not that it wasn't there. It's just that it wasn't presented in a very effective way. It was kind of lacking. He found it wasn't answering the questions that he was coming to it for, or it just wasn't presented in a way that was easily accessible. And so he decided he was going to do something about that. And so again, this is in his telling. That's why he founded this website, USAFacts.
And so that's how USAFacts was born. But before we get into what exactly it is, give us some precedent here. Obviously, we've seen most recently Elon Musk join former President Donald Trump on stage at various rallies. But is there a large group of billionaires wading into politics?
Absolutely. I feel like the only way you could be more involved than Elon Musk at this point, who is actively campaigning for President Donald Trump, is if you are a billionaire who runs for president yourself. Of course, Donald Trump is a great example of that. You've also got folks like Mike Bloomberg, Tom Steyer. They both ran for the Democratic nomination in 2020. You had Ross Perot, who was an independent billionaire candidate in the 90s. Steve Forbes actually ran at one point in the 90s as well. So there's this long history of billionaires who are very actively involved in politics. The majority of billionaires, though, they're not actually interested in getting into political office. What they want to do is put lots and lots of their money behind the causes that they care about, whether it's Charles Koch, pushing for free market libertarianism type things, or go back to Mike Bloomberg, for example, gives lots of money to groups that back gun control efforts. Lots of billionaires have pet issues that they really care about. Lots of them have partisan affiliations that they feel really strongly about, and they are very actively involved in our politics today.
And what's different about Steve Ballmer is this is not partisan. This is a nonpartisan group, USAFacts. What is it?
So very simply, USAFacts is a website that Steve Ballmer started up in 2017. And the goal is to collect, clean up, and then republish in a more effective and accessible way government data. And they started out with the goal of creating these government 10Ks, they call them. Basically, those documents that public companies have to file with the SEC every year. They wanted to do that for the government as well. And they do that. They publish an annual report that they call the Government 10K. But they also do other stuff. They publish all these data reports. And they also, this year, they really ramped things up for the election season.
Talk about that a little more, because essentially what they're doing is making government data more digestible, more easily accessible, more viewer friendly. How so? What exactly does the content look like that they're producing?
So this year, what they really leaned into is this 6-video series that they're calling Just the Facts videos. And these are videos that are hosted by Ballmer. They have 6 videos. Each one has a different topic. So that's immigration, the budget, the economy, energy, healthcare, and then a catch-all one that's America by the Numbers. These are videos, again, hosted by Ballmer. He's on the screen presenting data just like he would have at a Microsoft shareholders presentation, right, so many years ago. And they have aired on national news channels. The first 2 on immigration and the budget aired on Fox News, and then the rest aired on News Nation. And as they've also been heavily advertised on social media, and they've really been pushed out there on a variety of different platforms.
If you have a phone, if you have a TV, if you have the internet, essentially if you're a person that doesn't live under a rock, especially now as we are 2 weeks away from an election, you have been constantly fed political information. So in the age of misinformation, is there an audience for this content?
Steve Ballmer certainly thinks there is, and he has numbers that he says back it up. Ballmer says that over 45 million people have watched those first 4 videos that came out. The first one was released on August 1st, and since then they've collected 45 million views across YouTube and other online platforms. That includes 4 million people that he says have watched an entire video. So he says that's proof that there's some evidence for, there's some interest rather in this kind of content. Additionally, USAFacts has a newsletter that they send out, and that has over 350,000 subscribers. So we're not talking about small numbers here. There does appear to be some significant audience of people who are looking to collect data in this sense.
As you said at the top of this conversation, a lot of billionaires in particular who donate to political causes donate to partisan causes. So talk about the nonpartisan nature of this content.
So Ballmer says that USAFacts is strictly nonpartisan, and if you go on their website, you will see their goal is to present the data, and they say that you can draw your own conclusions from it. And they're very careful to do that. That's the reason, actually, they use only government data. They don't want to use academic studies. They don't want to use think tanks, because those typically come or can come with agendas or certain presuppositions, and they want to strictly avoid all of that. So the goal is really to be as nonpartisan as possible. They say, look, here are the official numbers that we have presented in a way for you. We're going to analyze the numbers, but that's it.
Now he's publicly giving to a nonpartisan cause. We'll talk about just how much in a second. But was he ever political? Was there a time that he was donating to any politicians of any political stripe?
So he has been active in Washington politics, but at least on the federal level, he's never been one of these big mega donors that is throwing millions and millions of dollars around here and there. His biggest federal donation that we have on record is $50,000 to the Obama Inaugural Committee, which helps plan the inauguration for the president. However, he hasn't been as strictly nonpartisan, even on donations, as he claims he has. Ballmer has given to candidates. He says he's only given to candidates that he knows well himself. He's given to 5 candidates, all Democrats, congressional candidates in recent years. And he's also given, again, in recent years, and I'm talking about sort of since USAFacts was started in 2017, he's given about $40,000 to the DCCC, which is the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee.
You said at the top of the conversation that Steve Ballmer's wife said, you need to get involved, I'm involved. Is she political? Does anyone in his family donate to political causes?
Yeah, Connie Ballmer is significantly more openly political than her husband is. She, just this cycle, has given $1.25 million to groups that are backing Harris for president. And she, between 2019 and 2022, we found that she'd given $14 million to various liberal groups during that time. However, I should also note, Steve protests that he does not control his wife, that they are separate people, that they make separate decisions. So he says that those donations should not make him look partisan.
So now let's talk about the money here when it comes to USAFacts. How much money has Steve Ballmer poured into this?
He says he's put over $100 million into USAFacts so far. The site has an annual budget nowadays. It's really ramped up since 2017. It's got an annual budget nowadays of about $20 million. He says that they're on track to spend over $40 million this year due to all of their various election year demands and everything. They really want to use this as an opportunity to promote the site and get the data out there in the most important time that you can. So over $100 million. That would not make him, the biggest political donor. Certainly the billionaires who've run for president and put lots and lots of money into their own campaigns, like Mike Bloomberg and Tom Steyer, they would have spent more than him. But nonetheless, that would put him in the category of billionaires.
Well, $100 million certainly is nothing to sneeze at, although it's not topping the charts here. But does he get any tax breaks from USAFacts?
He doesn't. The group is not organized as a 501c3 nonprofit organization. It's just an LLC. He compares spending on it, it's after-tax dollars is what he says. And his spending on it, he compares essentially to groceries. I guess you can drop $100 million like that, like groceries, when you're worth $100 billion. So he says that it is just a personal expense for him.
So since he is saying this is a personal expense, it's the equivalent of his grocery bill, what is his ultimate goal for USAFacts?
He says that the goal is to ground political discourse in a nonpartisan arena. So we're not talking about the partisan explanation for how we got here or a partisan solution for where we go. We want to talk about what is the situation on the ground today in a nonpartisan way using data. And I think this is my personal opinion, of course, but in the age of TikTok and in the age of constantly viral misinformation that we see all the time in political campaigns, it's at least refreshing to see someone putting money and betting on real fact-check vetted information.
Absolutely. Kyle Mullins, per usual, I appreciate your reporting. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Brittany.